I'm James Mills and you're watching CATEX-TV, broadcasting live from Princeton, New Jersey. Today's date is the 19th of August 2008 and the time is currently 11:30 a.m. in New York, 4:30 p.m. in London and 12:30 in Hamilton, Bermuda. Firstly, on this day in 1841, the first set of standard bankruptcy laws hit the books through the nation, and while the laws were repealed a few years later, they proved popular during a brief tenure with 33,737 people utilizing the newfound right to voluntarily declare for bankruptcy. First, we have some breaking news just in. NATO foreign ministers have said there will be no business as usual with Russia, as they urged Moscow to pull its troops out of Georgia immediately. The declaration followed emergency talks in Brussels about the conflict with Georgia over its breakaway region of South Ossetia. Some Russian troops have been seen leaving the Georgian town of Gori, but Russian checkpoints are still around the capital Tbilisi, and it is reported that vehicles and 100 men are heading for the South Ossetian capital and then on to a neighboring town in North Ossetia. In addition, Russian checkpoints are present about 35 kilometers from Tbilisi. And now the main news. A bomb at a police college east of the Algerian capital Algiers has killed 43 people and injured a further 38, the Interior Ministry says. The bombing targeted a paramilitary police training school near Boumediene, about 60 kilometers east of Algiers. An attacker drove a car full of explosives into the school's entrance, witnesses told the AFP news agency. Algeria has suffered regular attacks blamed on militants linked to Al-Qaeda. Tuesday's attack targeted exam candidates who were waiting outside the police school, witnesses said. Civilians as well as security officials were among the victims, they added. Tropical storm Faye has hit the southwest coast of Florida with heavy rains and strong winds. Forecasters had earlier warned that Faye could reach hurricane force, but later said the storm should weaken after making landfall. The storm crossed the Florida Keys and made landfall at about 5 a.m. local time at Cape Romano, just south of Naples, with winds of about 60 miles an hour. A curfew was in place in Naples, but no serious damage was reported. With a state of emergency in place, Florida Governor Charlie Crist said about 500 National Guard members had been deployed, with another 8,500 on standby. Power cuts were affecting about 5,800 residents on Marco Island, Collier County, officials reported. They also said 148 people had spent the night in storm shelters. Further north in Tampa Bay area, schools and government offices remained closed. However, an evacuation order in Pinellas County for mobile home residents and others in vulnerable areas was lifted when the storm failed to reach hurricane status. Strikes and protests are taking place in 5 of Bolivia's 9 provinces against President Evo Morales' plan to redistribute natural gas revenue. The 5 departments located in the wealthier eastern lowlands want to retain a greater share of the money. The strikes come 10 days after a referendum reaffirmed both President Morales' mandate and those of 4 of his main political rivals. Large numbers of police and troops are on duty around some of the main public buildings. Repeated attempts at dialogue between the government and the opposition governors in the eastern provinces have failed to produce any agreement. Venezuela has seized control of plants and offices belonging to Mexican cement giant Cemex as it proceeds with nationalizing its cement industry. Government officials backed by the National Guard took over the factories after talks ended without a deal. It comes a day after France's Lafarge and Swiss group Holcim agreed to hand over local subsidiaries to Caracas. At a political rally on Monday, President Hugo Chavez said Cemex would move into state hands after 60 days of failed negotiations, adding, "These are all steps towards socialism." According to reports, supporters waved flags and cheered as authorities moved in to take over Cemex's operations. 10 French soldiers have been killed in an ambush by Taliban fighters east of the Afghan capital Kabul, the French President's office has confirmed. A further 21 French soldiers were wounded in one of the heaviest casualty tolls suffered by international peacekeepers in Afghanistan. The soldiers were part of the NATO-led peacekeeping International Security Assistance Force. President Nicolas Sarkozy will go to Afghanistan shortly, his officers say. The rate of inflation in Zimbabwe jumped to just over 11,250,000% in June, official figures show. It gained 9,035,045.5 percentage points from the May rate of 2,233,713.4%, said state media quoting the Central Statistics Office. However, experts believe the actual rate of inflation may be much higher. Zimbabwe is in the midst of a dire economic crisis, with unemployment levels at almost 80%, most manufacturing at a halt and basic foods in short supply. High monetary supplies have also been fueling hyperinflation. Critics have accused President Robert Mugabe's government of printing money to finance his election campaign and prop up the economy. Japan's central bank has left interest rates on hold as nervousness about the country's slowing economy grows. The Bank of Japan voted to keep the benchmark rate at 0.5%, the same level it has been since February 2007. It said that high energy and material prices and weaker growth in exports had left Japan's economy sluggish, but the central bank chief said it was not heading for the kind of slump it had seen in the 1990s. The economy was in a better fundamental shape now than in the past, when Japan had too large a workforce and capacity for production. The central bank forecast that inflation already at its highest level in more than 15 years was set to accelerate, and Japan's heavy dependence on exports means it is vulnerable to the slowdown in the US and in Europe. Last week, the government said the economy had shrunk for the first time in a year during the second quarter, with GDP declining 0.6% between April and June. And now we'll go to a quick commercial break.
Every day, the world wakes up and goes to work, pursuing the unique opportunities that lead the global economy forward. The complexity and close connectivity of today's global marketplace is a true modern miracle that can create unparalleled success. But it takes confidence, passion, innovation, and understanding.
Enabling opportunity. Protecting capital.
Engineering innovation. Investing in your future.
Ensuring continuity.
Finding the right balance.
It takes Aon.
From prehistoric time to today, man's progress has been marked by his ability to fashion tools and use them to his advantage. From early humans making tools from stone, man evolved and was soon trading with other men. Money evolved, and tools such as the abacus to handle complex money transactions were developed. By the end of the 19th century, machines such as the cash register began to appear. 100 years later, we have even better computer-driven machines which track stock, change prices, and automatically reorder. Meanwhile, the reinsurance industry has failed to embrace man's drive for progress. The reinsurance industry today would be as familiar to practitioners from the 1800s as it is to modern underwriters. An underwriter or broker from 1800 would settle nicely into today's business. That is, until now. For the reinsurance industry, pivot point changes everything. Soon it will be understood that the period before pivot point was as dark as the caveman period was before the abacus. Come and see for yourself if you don't believe. After a demonstration, you will understand what is possible.
The global financial crisis is set to get